All right, welcome back to another edition of our Forza Friday, where I take the time to answer your Instagram questions. And the question that I'm going to try and answer today, this is a new kind of setup for me, was a question that came in from a graduate assistant a couple weeks ago about time management and how to get your athletes to, hold themselves accountable to whatever their priorities are or whatever their commitments would be. So I'm going to try this from a different perspective here. What I'm going to talk about is I'm going to kind of give you a sneak peek into what my fall and spring semesters looked like at SUNY Fredonia when I was a senior. And this was the first half of each semester, the fall and the spring. What we did was take methods courses in preparation for student teaching. So the first about 12 weeks of the semester, no less than that, 8 weeks of the semester were based on methods courses. So we would attend courses 3 days a week, where 2 days a week we didn't have class. At least that's how my cohort was set up. So I'd have a couple of methods courses each day, 3 times a week for the semester, for at least the first 8 weeks of the semester. So I wrote about this in the past. This is actually an excerpt from our latest thrower book, second edition, Propelling Towards Greatness, where one of the traits where we talk about the best focus on the process is really, what does a day look like for you? And I ask athletes to kind of fill in an example of what a typical day looks like for them, because that's where we actually put pen to paper, and I'm old school, I like the pen to paper stuff, but it really gives us an opportunity to see exactly what we do during the day, how we spend our time, and if there's places during the day where we might be able to, make up other priorities or other commitments. So I'm going to give you an example. This was a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday schedule that I had my fall semester in Fredonia in 2003. So really I would try and get up every day at 6 a.m. So between 6 and 7, get up, eat breakfast, get ready for the day. Like I said, we would have methods courses on campus. So a lot of our homework and projects was all group-based. So I was a lollygagger, and I still am with breakfast anyway. Like, I like to take my time and enjoy breakfast and get ready for the day. But so this is an example, and just kind of bear with me as we kind of go through the example on how to prioritize what's going on. So I would travel to class or travel to school, which wasn't too far of a drive, and then I would spend at least about 2.5 hours on a given day working in the library with my teammates. So we were different. We had different student teaching plans. So we were Plan H. So we called ourselves H Unit. So we would get together, usually 10 to 15 of us, and work in the library and work on our projects. Some of us were athletes. Other of us had jobs outside of campus. So this was really the only time that we were able to get together. And it worked out really well because we were fortunate that we didn't have methods classes really early in the morning. So we would spend about 2.5 hours in the library getting our work done. And then we would have our first methods class, which went from 10 to about 11:45 in the morning. We would have lunch either on campus or, because I lived basically across the street from campus, I would go home, have lunch, and then we come back for another class, methods class 2. So because I was on the track team, I would have practice from 3 to 4. Actually 3 to 5 usually was our throwing practice. I'd go to the weight room for an hour. Then I'd travel home, get ready for dinner, shower, things like that from 6 to 7. And then 7 to about 9 o'clock, really I'd work on classwork and other projects. So depending on, your student teaching placement, we had other responsibilities that we had to complete as individuals. So not only did we have group assignments and group projects and group presentations throughout the week, we would also have to prepare for our student teaching placement. So in the fall of 2003, I was placed in a 4th grade classroom. So I would prepare for the upcoming placement. So our placements usually started, like the 2nd, 3rd week of October, and they went until the end of the semester. So I was trying to prep and get ahead on, my projects, let's say. So I would try and get as much work done as I could beforehand, knowing that I was going to be, traveling to meets and practicing and going to the weight room and doing all that stuff. So I try and get as much done as I could before our actual student teaching placement started. And then I try and get about 8 hours of sleep a night, because I knew for me to be able to function, at least for track and in class, I needed at least 8 hours a night. So that's kind of like a snapshot of what my day looked like. We'll kind of go through that, again here quickly. But I would get up early in the morning, around 6 o'clock, because I knew getting to my student teaching placement, I'd have to get up that early in the morning anyway, so why not get a head start? Have a nice breakfast, go to the library, spend a couple hours in the library doing coursework with my teammates. We'd attend class, have lunch, I'd go home because I lived across the street like I mentioned, and then we'd go to another class, and then I had practice from 3 till about 5, and then I'd go in the weight room from 5 until 6. Now what's different with this and what my actual schedule turned out to actually be was I had a job in the weight room after the semester got started. So it was something that it's kind of like a work study, but I didn't have it assigned until, like the end of November almost, the week of Thanksgiving. So this travel home, prepare dinner, shower, when I was getting ready for the semester to end for the most part, really turned into work for, about an hour or so. But just kind of give some background. And then I'd work on some projects and bed. So what I asked the athletes or anybody who purchased this book, how do you, this was my daily schedule. That's pretty much what I did. So when you fill it in, for anybody now that you have this, and you could use a journal, there's a million apps that you can use to help you figure out how you need to stay accountable and time management and things like that. But really, I think what it boils down to is, how are you spending your time? I had a lot of my athletes at NAS this past year were, I could kind of zoom in on that a little bit. Let's see. There we go. I had a lot of my athletes at NAS really talk a lot about not having enough time to study, or they were really stressed out about classes and homework and things like that. But the interesting thing was, three of the 5 athletes that I coached pretty much were taking the same classes. So one athlete would take maybe 2 or 3 hours to study for a course. Another athlete might take, 45 minutes. And it depended on, their other habits or whatever they indulged. So back in Fredonia in 2003, Instagram, Twitter, none of the social media stuff that we have access to now was available to us because it wasn't invented. Facebook was, but it really wasn't as popular as it is today. So when you're thinking about your priorities and your time management, if you bought the book, the first couple of chapters talk about what your goals are and what's your vision. What do you want to accomplish? Where do you see yourself going at the end of a particular season or collegiate career, for example? And how do you structure your day in order to accomplish those goals that you set for yourself? So, for example, if you want to throw, 60 feet in the shot put or weight throw or whatever, how are you structuring your day in order to give yourself the best opportunity to be able to throw that far? So are you staying up until 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning? Are you telling yourself, well, that's the only time that I can study or get my work done? Because if you are, I'd call you out on it. I used to call my athletes out on it all the time. If you're up to 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning studying, there's something else going on there. And I didn't really press too much with all of my kids. I knew when to kind of dig in a little bit and when to let off. But if you're staying up till 4 o'clock in the morning trying to study for a test or cram for that stuff, research really suggests that's not the most advantageous way to study or prep. So you really need to think about that. What are you doing with your time when you're not in class, when you're not at practice, when you're not in the weight room? What are you doing? Are you on social media? Are you taking care of yourself? Like there I talk about, a 10-minute walk of gratitude, which I wish I would have known about that back in 2003. I think I would have had a much more pleasant collegiate experience. Do you spend, too much time in the weight room? Do you spend too much time in the athletic trainer's office? Do you spend too much time in the library, but you're really socializing and you're on Instagram and you're doing your Snapchats and you're doing all those things? So if you say you want to be great, you really need to look at your calendar, look at your daily routine, and decide for yourself if what you think you're doing or what you are doing, is that going to get you to reaching your goal? Is that going to get you to where you think you want to be? Now, some people don't keep track of sleep, that they can go on 4 or 5 hours a night every night. Eventually that's going to catch up to you, especially if you want to be a high-level elite type athlete. But how do you structure your downtime? So let's say you only have, you have 3 hours of class a day, right? You have an hour for lunch, maybe 30 minutes for breakfast, right? It's already like only 3.5 hours. If you get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, well, you've kind of lost 7 hours there, right? So now we're at like 11, 12 hours. You go to bed at 10 o'clock, there's another 2 hours. So you still have half a day to get whatever it is that you need to get done. How are you structuring that time? Now, you can use a template like this to kind of fill in the blanks a little bit. Or like I said, there's a whole bunch of different apps that are available now that you can use to incorporate, to fill in your time, to try and figure out what you're doing. But I really encourage those athletes that think that they're good at time managing to take 5 minutes, pull out a piece of paper, and write down what you do. Or keep like a little pocket journal, a little notebook, and write down everything that you do during the course of the day. And you'll start realizing that, oh wow, 20 minutes on Instagram here, or I spent 3 hours in the weight room today. All of that stuff builds up. Now, 3-hour weight room sessions, I wouldn't encourage that if I was a coach. I try and get my kids in and out in at least an hour, hopefully 45 minutes, because we use the weight room to support what we're doing on the track or in the throwing circle. If my kids are spending more time in the weight room than they do throwing, then that's poor scheduling and poor time management for me as a coach. But I really want you to think about some of these questions here. Now that you've had a chance to look at this and kind of review. Now, everyone's going to be different. Obviously, my schedule is much different as a senior, but if I didn't have the schedule that I had, it would have been much more difficult for me to, I think, make it through and have a successful senior year of college. So really, you need to think about it. How are you spending your time? What can you do, or where can you find time to take care of yourself, to better prepare for track or whatever sport you're competing in on a daily basis. So thank you for watching. I know this is kind of a different video, but I wanted to get that question answered about time management. Hopefully this answers that question. Hopefully you're able to see kind of like what a day in the life might be, but fill it out for yourself. Try and figure out where you think you can fit in things throughout the day to give yourself a better opportunity to be successful in accomplishing and achieving whatever goals you set out for yourself. Thanks for watching. My name is Charles Infurna, and have a great day.